We have all wanted to know the identity of the Supervisor from the very beginning of Skeleton Crew. One of the popular theories that has been going around is that it's the captain. Captain Renaud is the Supervisor, but this last episode showed that's not possible. There are, however, two theories remaining, and I think I know which one it is. How's it going? Welcome to the Force Fandom, a channel for regular fans who love Star Wars. Today we're going to be talking about the most recent episode of Skeleton Crew. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'd go watch it and then come back. So in episode 7 of Skeleton Crew, we heard the Supervisor's voice for the first time.
This is the Supervisor speaking.
And the Supervisor is actually a knight. No, not a Jedi Knight, an actual real knight who was just knighted in 2025. Stephen Fry is the voice of the Supervisor. And while that doesn't really give us any information as to who the Supervisor is, I just thought it's kind of funny that the Supervisor's a knight. And just so we can move past this real quick, you've heard the voice of the Supervisor in this last episode, and it just doesn't match the voice we heard of Tack Renaud 2 episodes earlier.
I have the ship, clad in armor and ready, but my crew still doubts Ad-Aden is real.
And that's how we know that the Captain Renaud is not the Supervisor. Let's keep moving. Anyway, I think there's two distinct possibilities of who the Supervisor could be. We heard an audible message from a humanoid voice. So for some, that would say that means the Supervisor is alive. The Supervisor is a human like the rest of the planet, yet he's somehow put all these droids in motion. Now, some people have thought, well, that's just simply not possible. Wouldn't the Supervisor have died by now? Well, I think that's partly assuming that the Supervisor would stay as one singular person, one figure forever. But that isn't how the Star Wars galaxy has really operated in any capacity. We've seen in many different aspects that people come to power in different ways, that different people lead at different times. And I think there is a train of thought that could say, based on the assessments that are taken and the assessment tests, could there be a future Supervisor that's found among that list? Someone who maybe has the aptitudes and the abilities that they're looking for. There was a line that was said by Wim's dad that got me thinking about this.
I wish we could say more. You weren't supposed to find out about any of this until you graduate.
So upon graduating, there's something that they find out more. There's more information, and it might be some of the things like the reason for the barrier, the reason the rules of the barrier exist, what the barrier is doing, what the work connected to the great work actually is, right? They start to be given more information about these things once they graduate from school and they've been indoctrinated into the way of Ad-Aden, and so they can learn more about what's happening. So that would also then lead to say they might learn more about the Supervisor, and maybe if there's someone who's identified as filling that role next, could end up becoming the next Supervisor. This is also maybe back to some of the comments that Fern's mom said early on, is really saying there's not much room at the top. Meaning this might be like a whole pyramid scheme thing where there's one person at the top who's controlling everything, but obviously that person can't live forever, so they might have to pick their successor and train them to do what they do while having all of the droids run interference for all of the bureaucracy and everything else so that they're not bothered. Maybe that's the way the system is set up so that the Supervisor can ensure everything is running the way that it needs to be. Now, I think there's a few problems with this theory because when we realize the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and when we look to things like the Emperor taking control of so much power and wealth in the galaxy, you really end up doing things to serve yourself. Now, maybe you would push back and say, yeah, that's why they keep making all these credits. That's why they've not paid attention. But you would imagine that the supervisor would somehow have communication, if not between those other 9 planets who all share the same autopilot sequencing for emissary ships coming aboard. And clearly emissary ships were known about because the parents knew about these ships. So there's something that maybe is still there. But at the end of the day, the supervisor, you would think, would have control of communications when needed. Kind of why they want to appeal to the supervisor in the first place. Which brings up a problem of why I don't think this theory works the best. And it's simply that I think over time, the supervisor would have caught wind or would have had some type of communication that's now just sitting in his email that has not been opened for years and years and years and years, and instead has been kind of forgotten about, lost about, or moved on from. And it makes it seem like everything has just been running on autopilot. And I guess that's kind of where number 2 comes in, option 2, and maybe there's a third, so maybe the intro of this video was wrong, but it just means you get more theories, which is fine. So the other option that a lot of people talk about is this idea that maybe it's just run purely by droids, and that's been one that I've thought about for a long time and thought, really, that's kind of maybe what's happening. The droids are just running on autopilot, that they've not allowed any communications to come and go, and so they're just moving and going, doing the same thing again and again and again, creating more vaults, creating more credits, and just pumping these things out because that's what they're programmed to do. Now, if I'm being honest, I think that's the most likely scenario. I think this is probably just an operation run by droids. We see it mentioned multiple times, this distrust of droids, this dislike of droids. Droids, you're not listening. Jod clearly doesn't really like droids. The pirates aren't using droids. There aren't droids on Atten. Kind of interesting things like, there aren't droids on Akron. And so all of this comes together and say, if this is a droid running everything, you could maybe see how they've set it up to be that way. This distrust, the supervisor is only going to do now what's best for the galaxy, even though it's got blinders on and it has no communication for hundreds of years. So that's the only thing that would make me come back to this and go, but a droid would follow protocol and a droid would follow orders. So if a droid was given orders or some information somehow had gotten back about the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, I think there's one of 2 options that could happen here. Either there was a message sent and said, now we're in lockdown. We are in lockdown. No one can come to these credits. These cannot be known about. We're erasing them. And so just keep making. Maybe that was the directive and the order given. Because the other option would be they heard about and know about the problem out there, but they have ignored it. Or what would their directive be? I'm not quite sure. And so the last option that it maybe could be, and this is what I've been thinking about even as we're sitting here, is that the supervisor, who at one time was living, automated the whole system. Now the supervisor tower is actually empty. We get these appeals for these droids to go to the supervisor, but he's maybe just set it up so that it just keeps going and no one has replaced him. I think that's possible. And actually probably seems like what could be when we look at the things like the Fallen Sanctum kind of give us that feel. It was abandoned and left alone. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards the second of the 3 now that I've given you, that I think it feels like it's just a droid operation that is just churning out and was told to be secretive and no communications, blah, 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 whole kind of thing. But what do you think? Who is the supervisor? What's the most likely of the theories? Are we going to find out in this last episode coming up next week? I'm kind of feeling and worried that we're going to be let down, that this is going to be a build-up to not very much, but I've enjoyed Skeleton Crew to this point, so maybe that's just my doubts and fears that Disney can't get Star Wars right, and they're just not good at doing this stuff, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. We're going to find out. Let me know your theories down in the comments below. What did I miss? I'm sure there's another one that could be out there. Could it be Wim's mom? Could it be Some other, maybe where's Fern's dad? We've never met him or heard about him. Who knows? That's kind of the fun. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you like content like this and love engaging with Star Wars content, please hit that subscribe button. I'll see you on the next one.